Buddy Gene Jackson back over. Gene, we had a great time last time talking about Mid-South Wrestling. Got a lot of great feedback. And, as always, me and you, on the same show together, two really handsome guys, well-built, and so I knew that we'd get a lot of fan mail about it, right?
I'm glad you said that because everybody loved the wrestling portion of it and said that we were hilarious. But the overwhelming majority of comments that I got was that we both sounded extremely handsome over the air. And I thought that was pretty perceptive of these people to catch that.
It is, yeah, it's so true. Last time we talked about Mid-South Wrestling, and now we're going to talk about, and you talked about your background, and we both, if you listen to any episodes, everyone know, I grew up on Memphis wrestling, and but this is New York. All-Star Wrestling, July the 14th, 1979. Guys, it's WWE Network, The Vault. Go watch it before you listen to us, and and then listen to what we thought about it. Just 1979. I started being a wrestling fan in 78. So this was about a year after I became a fan in August of 78. But I never seen any of this stuff. This was all stuff that, you read about in the aftermags. And a lot of these guys were guys that, After was putting over big time because it was in New York, and that's where After was.
That's right. And like I mentioned last time, I started being a wrestling fan in 1986, and I stopped in 2018 when I watched this show. But we'll get into that more as we go along.
All right. Yeah. I know what you mean there. So the show opens with, the greatest commentary duo ever. Actually, Vince and Bruno in these god-awful shit yellow suits. And, if I could remember right, this kind of reminds me of the 70s and 80s when they had the Wide World of Sports. Didn't they have jackets like this or something? I don't know. I think that's what they
did, and that's got to be what they're going for here. Because you're in a sport that professes to be, a manly and tough sport, and you got Bruno Sammartino with a huge afro and this god awful canary yellow jacket, and that was the first thing that caught my eye. I was like, what the hell are they wearing? Jesus. And then a very, very young Gary Capetta ring announcing here caught my eye and ear as well.
Yeah, he is real young there. And I just want to say, you say what you want to, Bruno, guys. I know there's a lot of Bruno fans out there. I know he drew a lot of money. I never was a fan of him in the ring. Apparently he was a really super guy, best I could tell, but I hated him on announcing. It just sounded like he had it was like he was eating something while he was talking. I mean, just a big, huge mouthful of something. He didn't bother me as much as he did. I remember other times when I just, his commentary was just so bad, but I love Vince McMahon as a commentator.
Yeah, he was excellent at it in the early years anyway, over time.
Yeah. I mean, he become like too much over the top. But yes, he was really good at this time, young, and really seemed to really get into everything and put over the storylines and such.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right, so our first match, believe it or not, we got Ted DiBiase, who we had on the Mid-South show last time, but Ted DiBiase against Jimmy Valiant, and we had Captain Lou Albano healing. He was managing Valiant. And Valiant, I don't know the time frame here, 79, was he was also a heel in Memphis at the time, I think.
He was, and that was the thing that stood out to me about this match. Because most guys wrestled a different style in New York than they did in Memphis. But this match could have taken place on Memphis TV and been the exact same match that we saw here. Jimmy Valiant worked the same Jimmy Valiant match. It didn't matter what TV was on. That's what you were getting. But if I can go on a little tirade here right out of the gate.
Go ahead.
Okay. And this may hurt some people's feelings. I'm sorry to the old school fans out there who, hold, some of these guys in high regard. I do too. I love old school wrestling. I respect wrestlers. But Captain Lou Albano was the drizzling fucking shit
Horrible.
as a manager. Like, his gimmick here apparently was just he's a fat slob. He comes out in shorts, and the thing that stood out to me most about this whole show is Albano, every time he interfered, he did it until the referee looked directly at him and caught him. He would choke the guy until the ref would look right at him, and then he would stop after he was caught, and nobody got DQ'd through this whole freaking match. And then even later with Blassie, same shit. Referee would look directly at him and catch him cheating, which should have been a DQ. Nope, that's when they would just finally decide to stop.
I never understood the appeal of Albano. I really didn't. I liked the stuff with Cyndi Lauper just because it was different, and it was, it was hot during that time. But I just never understood that at all. This match, Valiant, like you said, wrestled just like he was in Memphis on TV. Did the whole bobbing his head. I was a huge fan. I guess I was little 13 or 14 years old when he was healing against Lawler, and I was a huge fan of Valiant's. He had a fun bump over the top rope during the first sequence of moves. His Luscious Johnny comes out. Man, DiBiase got a lot of this match. I mean, just a lot of it. And then we ended up with I thought it was they got DQ because Albano was still choking him. Albano was. And it was a time limit draw.
Which at least you got some heat with the choking. I mean, it was a shit finish. And I mean, like the Valiants in general were great heels, especially up there in New York. I mean, they were just absolutely great heels. Jimmy Valiant, to me, does not get the credit he deserves. I mean, yes, his matches weren't 5-star classics, and his work was nothing to write home about, but he got a lot of great heat. And the fact he was able to just completely reinvent himself a few years later to become Boogie Woogie Man and have a whole nother run outside of his heel Valiant run. And not to mention, you think of how many heels he influenced. I mean, Michael Hayes was obviously heavily influenced by, the original heel Jimmy Valiant. Like, I just don't think those guys really get their due. I mean, he's kind of looked upon by workers now as somewhat of a joke. And, I think he deserves a lot more credit than he gets for, him and Johnny Valiant as a heel tag team. Because I will go on record and say, when my friend Memphis Monroe had a tag team partner, and they were called the Monroe Brothers, I ripped off everything I could find from the Valiants back in the day.
I agree with you. Valiant was, I think his best stuff was in Memphis because I was growing up watching it. But the run that he had, Boogie Woogie Man, in the NWA, I mean, those matches were just, totally the shits, but that's what it was supposed to be. He was just comedy. And you and me have been in the same arena, in the South, especially at a small show, and he walks out. No matter how old this guy is, he gets one of the biggest pops ever. He can just walk around playing that stupid music and he's more over than anybody. So yeah,
I've wrestled him twice.
Oh wow, I've never wrestled. I was in a dressing room with him at Gibson and he farted. Does that count?
That's match with him fart. It's right up there. But I got to experience wrestling Jimmy Valiant twice, and we worked the exact same match twice, spot for spot. But it got over. It was in two different places, and it got over, and it was easy as shit, and the crowd loved it. And my thing's always been, if the crowd enjoys it and they pop for it, who are you to sit and judge because it wasn't a 5-star match? I mean, hell, it's what they paid to see.
That's true. Yeah. So we had DiBiase cut a promo after this match. Again, just a damn good. This was a babyface interview. He was pissed off in this, and he was sweating like I don't know what. But just a really good interview. DiBiase just got my respect double on these two shows we've done so far. Even very young, he's good on the microphone and good in the ring.
Oh yeah. He was well on his way to being the star that he came out to be.
And then we had, good God, this was horrible. Nikolai Volkov came out with Freddie Blassie. The thing about Freddie that I noticed after the match, we'll talk about the match here in a minute, was that he was sweating like crazy, too, in that interview. And either that building was hot or everyone was nervous about something. But Volkov went against Johnny Rivera and Steve King, and I have no idea who these guys was, but it was like a Tornado Rules match. It was a handicap match, but they were all in the ring at the same time.
First of all, I didn't remember the time period where where Nikolai Volkov had hair and looked like Stan Hansen's brother. I mean, that's all I could think of this whole match. Is like, it looks like freaking Stan Hansen if Stan Hansen couldn't work to save his fucking life. This was one of the god-awfulest matches I've ever seen. And again, in the back of my mind, all I could think is these guys I read on Facebook and all these groups are, the wrestling in the late 80s and 90s and now just sucks. You're back in the 70s when it was good. This was fucking horrible. Like, half the match was this grabbing him in waist locks and seeming like they were legit trying to take him back. It's like these two guys didn't even know this was a work. You know what I mean? Like, none of them were working together through half this. It's like Volkov was legit trying to wrestle these guys, and they're trying to waist lock him and take him down. It was just fucking horrendous on every level. How it didn't get edited if this wasn't a live show, why they didn't edit it out, I'll never know. But the only thing worse than the match was the goddamn 8-minute rambling promo after the fact. It just wouldn't end. It just went on, and you could tell like Blassie was out of shit to say, and he's just making up more shit. And then they would let Volkov talk, and it was even worse. It was everything about it was bad. Like, can you pick one thing about that match from the opening ring announcements to the end of the promo that you can say, well, that was pretty good?
That one jobber, Johnny Rivera, took a bump to the floor that looked really nasty. Other than that, and what got me was Volkov. He looked just really green. We've seen wrestlers better than him believe it or not, I just said better in Mississippi than this. And he's a big star. He's a fucking huge star here. He picks this guy up tries his best to do a military press. It's real clumsy. He then drops him into a pinning combination somehow. I mean, it looked like he was holding him like a baby to pin him. It just was god awful. And Blassie was all tan and again, not a fan. Never was a fan of Blassie either. So all these New York managers I never was a big fan of. All right, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back with Gene Jackson. We're talking about All-Star Wrestling in July 14th, 1979, and we both told how much we love Freddie Blassie.
You can tell how we were both raised on Southern wrestling because we're shitting all over this.
They don't compare to the Jimmy Hart interviews. They don't compare to watch Jim Cornette's very first interview on YouTube, and he's better than any of the managers that was on this show. And I don't know how these guys were getting over, how they were making any money, how they were, how the fans. And during that squash, you were talking about it was just horrible. Was there anything good about it? The fans were just completely quiet. I mean, just completely quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Just horrible.
It's like they were having that match in a library or something.
Yeah. And then we got, next up was Johnny Roz, who's, is that Roz? Is that what they call him, Johnny Roz?
Yeah, Johnny Roz.
Yeah. And then we have Gypsy Rodriguez, who I have no idea, went against Pete Sanchez and Tito Santana. And Santana looked really good. He came in with a fire and got he got fucking cut off in like 2 seconds. There's just no freaking psychology whatsoever.
Nope. And then you fast forward a few years later, and Rods is going to be a jobber, and Tito went on to be Intercontinental Champion and Tag Team Champion and everything that he did. But yeah, like you said here, Rods and him's just eating them up.
And Tito's damn good. I mean, even here you could see it. At one time, all four of the guys just got in the ring at once. It was like a total clusterfuck for no reason.
Yeah, again, it's just more of that, just no psychology. Like, popular opinion would have you believe that back in the day, nothing took place in wrestling without a ton of psychology behind it and everything made sense. Bullshit. Get on the network. That's not true. It's just not true.
It's not at all. And then like I said, man, these are hour-long matches, hour-long TV shows without the commercials, and so many matches in 1 hour. It's just crazy. The next matchup was S.D. Jones against Pat Patterson and the Grand Wizard, who to me was, all these heel managers were just horrible.
Okay. So, yeah, the Grand Wizard. You couldn't have him today. But, all right, couple things right out of the chute here. We talked about how ugly on the last episode that we did of this, how ugly the North American title belt was. Intercontinental belt, circa 1979, piece of shit. It was just as ugly as the North American title was in Mid-South. However, the thing that stands out that I've got to get out right here at the beginning, and people who don't believe me, go back and watch this match. Like Brian said, go to the network and watch this match. And it's terrible that this is the one thing that stands out to me, but I swear to God it's true. Brian will probably have to go back and watch it if he didn't catch it himself. But I swear to God, on commentary, whenever he was stuck in the ropes, Vince McMahon says, S.D. Jones yanks Patterson off.
I didn't hear that. I'll have to go back.
I swear he said, wrote it down the minute he said it. I was like, oh my God, and wrote it down. And that's how mature I am. So. Patterson
took like one of the most awkward looking backdrops. It was like back in this, in that show Mid-South, there was a couple of them too, but this backdrop was just, I thought he killed himself. Patterson had some really good, he has good punches. And then S.D. Jones hit Patterson with a drop kick while Patterson was on his knees. I was just like, what the fuck are they doing?
He did. And the funny thing is, given his size and some of the fire he shows, S.D. Jones could have went down south and been a big baby face. Huge, he was twice the wrestler that Rufus R. Jones was, and you seen what of a push he managed to get here and there. He could have went down there and made some money and been, in a main event spot. But, he's wrestling for, he's wrestling Intercontinental Champion. But, of course, he would just go on to be the perennial jobber. But, they had a pretty, I guess you'd say this was the best match on the show. But like I said, there was some super awkward spots, that backdrop. And like I said, the drop kick with him on his knees and stuff like that. But, Pat Patterson, him and I talked about the Valiants, but precursor to the Valiants and some of the same era, Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens were like the heel tag team of their day back then, and the blonde hair and all that. And I think the Valiants probably lifted a lot of their stuff from Patterson.
Yeah, and you could also see Patterson came off as a star. I mean, he really did. He had the belt on, and with the Grand Wizard's always just strange looking to me. And Paul Heyman was just a huge Grand Wizard fan, and I just didn't get that. I think you had to live in New York to like the managers from New York. I really do. I think you had to. Patterson ended it with it was a full Boston Crab, right?
Yeah, that was the finish.
And then we had this fantastic finish, speaking of finish, fantastic match at the end between the guy Frank Williams against Swede Hansen. Bruno kept saying...
Speaking of handsome dudes.
Yeah, handsome Hansen. Hansen was from the South and had retired a bunch of wrestlers in the South. God, he was horrible too, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. And, you kind of made mention of this on the Mid-South episode, and I've learned this going back and watching a lot of old stuff. It wasn't until the later 80s, and Bill Watts kind of popularized this, where you started having main event caliber matches to close the show. And of course, Watts would always run out of time and you wouldn't get to finish by design. But like, if you watch these shows, like I would say, I mean, if you're looking at this card, DiBiase and Jimmy Valiant could pass as the main event. Patterson and S.D. Jones could pass as the main event. But they always put on like a squash match at the very end, and what you would consider, well, that's the main event spot. It's the last match on the show. But the last match on that Mid-South episode did not come off really like a main event, and this certainly didn't. I mean, like you say, you talking about two of the ugliest dudes that's ever walked the earth. Frank Williams, most notable for his appearance on Piper's Pit, where Roddy beat the shit out of him.
I don't remember that.
And Swede Hansen.
I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't?
No, I sure don't.
Oh my! I was about to say, Jesus Christ, that's like the only thing you would ever know this guy for. And then Swede Hansen, who had an ugly pile driver to go along with his ugly mug. But yeah, it was just a brutal match, and it was like Freddie Blassie's back out there with him, and it's almost just like part two of his appearance with Volkov earlier in the show. But just thank God Swede wasn't in a handicap match. Good Lord.
I mean, he should have been Handsome Hansen. That should have been his gimmick. That's one of the ugliest
right there.
Just horribly ugly people on this show. Maybe that's what made it bad. Everyone was ugly, Well, you had Valiant and DiBiase, that when that's the best looking guys you got on the show, so that's pretty fucking scary there. So, I didn't have a hard problem with his pile driver, but I just had this weird, strange feeling that Frank Williams had a hard time with that pile driver because it looked like it really got him. So.
Oh yes, it did. My only other real memory of Swede Hansen, I was watching random old WWF shows or WWE on YouTube a while back, and this was from around like '84, and they bring Swede Hansen out as a babyface in New York City at Madison Square Garden with a big denim vest on with a rebel flag across the back of it, and he's going in wrestling like Salvatore Bellomo or some shit, but he's supposed to be the baby face, and he's got a rebel flag in his jacket. He's got like a Confederate hat on, and the crowd just looks bewildered. Like, why would we cheer this guy? Like, what the fuck? And that's my only other really chance to see Swede Hansen in action. So
I actually did a Wikipedia on him. So in my mind, I thought I had seen him. I don't know if he was in Texas or what. But he used to he was in a famous tag team with Rip Hawk. And for some reason, I have, Rip Hawk's name sounds familiar, but I never did remember. After that, I said, no, there's no way it was this guy. And I think Vince, or one of the announcers, or Bruno, actually called him Stan Hansen at first. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I caught that. I did catch that, yeah. I think it might have been Bruno. But
all right, so
of course, I think he would know Stan Hansen.
Well, yeah, I think you might remember that one. By the way, during this actually, Bob Backlund was the champion. We didn't see Bob at all, which I thought was kind of weird. But he was the champion during this time period. All right, Gene. So we ask, everyone likes this old wrestling. Was it really that good?
It was freaking atrocious. It was, I mean, DB Brawl. I mean, like I said, Albano drugged that match down because he was just freaking horrible. I'm sorry, he was horrible. And everybody loves classy Freddie Blassie, but again, going back and watching it, I don't get it. His long rambling ass promo was just awful, and just there's really nothing about this show that I could point to and go, yeah, that was really good. Like I say, Patterson and S.D. Jones was passable, but just overall, no. I have no desire. I don't know what you've got up your sleeve for future episodes, but I hope to God we get a break on All-Star Wrestling episodes for the near future because that was brutal.
I agree. This, guys, you want to hear all these guys complaining that there's no psychology in wrestling, and back in the 70s they knew how to do it. And I've even heard guys say, Memphis wrestling was was bullshit. If you wrestled in Memphis, you got a bad reputation. Guys, there was a lot better wrestling going on in the 70s in Memphis wrestling than New York ever thought to be. All right, guys, join us next time. Same bad time, same bad channel on the Best Little Wrestling Podcast in the business. Love my mama. Be there. Now, Gene, tell everyone who I sounded like just then.
Oh, that's straight up Corey Macklin right there, man. All day long. Big move. If you add that in, it's perfect.